Okay, all right. Sorry about that. All right, let's do it. Okay. First off, I want to welcome everyone to our January the 24th of 2023 meeting. We are holding this meeting virtually. The first order of business is to the confirmation of a quorum. So
Yes,
do we have enough? Yeah, it looks like we have plenty of people here today. Okay. And then the next thing is the confirmation of the press release.
Yes, the press has been notified of the meeting.
Excellent, excellent. All right. At this time, we will consider approval of the meeting minutes that was held on July the 26th. Everyone should have a copy of those minutes in their package.
This is Travis, so moved to approve the minutes.
Okay. So Travis has given us a motion to approve the minutes. Anybody second?
Second, Jimmy Igdon.
Jimmy, okay. Thank you, Jimmy. All right. Motion has been properly moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Excellent. So the minutes have been passed. All right. Next up, we have the introductions. And when it says introductions, I am assuming that we are referring to our newest member. Okay. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to welcome Nima Kilcarney to our board. She is a state representative, and she has not only had her own law practice since 2010, but she has done quite a few other things, as you can see from her bio. I'm not going to read all of it, but that also is in the package, so feel free to read that information. Nima, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be a part of this important work.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Anyone else to add? All right. Okay. All right. Next up, we have legislation action HB 89 update from Wendy Smith.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair Coleman. I just wanted to let you all know there is draft legislation. I'll be honest, I have not checked in the last week to see kind of if it's had any movement or anything, but House Bill 89 in this current session would add an additional $15 million to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for the purpose of assisting people who have been made housing unstable by either the Western Kentucky tornado or the Eastern Kentucky flooding. So it would be an additional $15 million for disaster survivors of those two disasters. It's, we would have to do slightly different guidelines and, figure out a couple of programmatic details, but otherwise it would still be the standard trust fund and trust fund uses, but again, focused on disaster survivors. I have no idea, how much legs this has or anything. I just wanted to let you all know, because if it does come to be, then it'll be kind of something we report on to you all potentially separately as kind of two buckets of funding. So just a heads up on my part.
All right, thank you.
Wendy, could I ask a question? Jimmy Higdon, ask a question on that.
Yeah. I hope I can answer it, Jimmy.
Well, I haven't seen the bill or read it either. I'm just wondering if that's an appropriation of new money, or is that just a legislation to move money around?
My impression, Jimmy, but I'm not sure, is that this would be, the last I heard was that it was to take some of the state coronavirus fiscal relief funds and move that into that Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So you tell, I don't know, I think that counts as moving money around, but you tell me, because that's in the rainy day fund.
Yeah, well, I know that's the reason I wanted to try to get some clarification. They've made a decision not to reopen the budget this time, and we do that every short session. We always make that determination because we always have so many budget requests that it's like, if we open it up, it's like going into another budget session. So, but moving money around, if it's already been appropriated, might not be a difficult task, but appropriating money probably would. So, and I'm not sure. I'll check on that and maybe get back to you and let you know what the status would be on that.
Sure, I appreciate that, Jimmy, and I'll share with you all the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is something our nonprofit partners in Eastern and Western Kentucky they already use it all the time to repair homes, to build rental properties. And in terms of using it alongside FEMA or what's called Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery money, AHTF is just a really good fit because it is state, it's not federal, so it doesn't duplicate, and it's very flexible for our nonprofits to use. So they are very eager to have a little bit of this kind of flexible state-generated funds to sit alongside other federal dollars in the disaster areas.
May I ask another question? I'm sorry to interrupt.
This is what this is for.
Well, do we have currently any of those nonprofits that have had proposals in for approval for East and West Kentucky areas?
Yeah, so here's how it's happened so far, Jimmy. We already have AHTF grantees that already operate in West and East Kentucky. And what we have done is made their AHTF guidelines a little more flexible, higher dollar amount, a broader scope of work of what they can do with disaster survivors. So the answer is yes, and we're already doing it with the AHTF money we do have. We just know they're going to need more, So yes, if you want some examples, we can get it to you.
Well, I think it'd be nice to understand what you want to do, because Representative Kilcarney and myself can obviously help with that, talk about that and find, because obviously we have the money, and I've often bragged on Kentucky Housing and that's appropriate place for it to be to get the job done, especially in this circumstance.
I will follow up with you all with more information, but I'll tell you it's three main uses. One, and it's what we already use AHTF for. We would just make it even more flexible for disaster survivors, but to repair homes that can be repaired that aren't in a floodplain or what have you. So if it's just basic repairs up to about $30,000-$40,000, they could use AHTF to do that. So that could be on top of if they got anything from FEMA, or from their insurance, but it's not enough to fix their house up and get it back up to code. That'd be one. Two would be just building new housing for people whose homes were destroyed, people who are living in travel trailers. HTF can be blended with other funds to do that alongside a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. And then the third would be to build rental housing, because we already have a shortage across the whole state and we've lost these units in East and West Kentucky. In East Kentucky, a lot of the rentals were trailers. A lot of those are gone. In West Kentucky, it was single family homes that were rentals that got destroyed or heavily damaged by the tornado. And those landlords, they can't see a feasible way to rebuild right now. So we're going to have to look at how we incentivize that. So it'd be those three big uses for development of units or fixing up existing units.
And this is I agree with everything Senator Higdon has said, and I think that it'd be important for us to understand, or I would like to know kind of what organizations exist that would be applying. I think that this is, just who exists basically to do this kind of work. I just wanted to clarify. You said it was House Bill, was it 89?
That's the last I heard, was that it was HB 89, yeah. And I could send you, I have a link to it if that's helpful.
Well, I looked it up, and I think that one is that Bowling Green, right? And it's an appropriation. It says House Bill 89 from 23. So it's appropriating it for the Veteran Center.
Okay, I must have the wrong number then. I will look it up because it was supposed to be for AHTF for disaster survivors. So maybe I've got the number wrong.
Okay, well, I'm looking at HB 89 from this session.
Okay.
And it doesn't sound, unless I don't think it's one of the provisions in there. So just.
Okay, I will go back and find the link that I had. It's possible it's gotten changed or what have you. But if it has a shot, we would love to see it happen, because right now we're slicing the same pie into more slices with Affordable Housing Trust Fund, of course.
And do you happen to know who the sponsor or sponsors is?
I don't. It was a partner of ours who tipped us off to it. So let me go back and find that email and the link, and then I will follow up with you and Senator Higdon.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wendy, this is Travis. Can I make a suggestion on this, or at least a thought on this? So the problem with HTF funds, state HTF funds, is that there is this notion that you have to show that you can cash out for 30 years, even though your mortgage is only going to be 17 in these deals. And with the Western Kentucky, everything that we've been told is going to be a bond NOFA. And it's going to be really difficult to make it work anyways. It's going to take a ton of soft funds, which everyone has told me, look, that's what we have. We got all these CDBG funds that can go towards this, and it can make it work. And this is how we're going to have to play it out to make these projects go. And I'm fine with that. From my perspective, if we're going to do a deal down there, if I have to show that I've got a 30-year project that's going to cash out all the way through on the existing mortgage that's only going to be 17 and refied in 17, I don't want those dollars. And I think that when we're looking at something like this that is a complete anomaly, we need to look at some of those guidelines and say, hey, maybe we need to move this around or do something different or do some kind of provision, because those dollars end up being, because you have to put an escrow account. So you'll end up getting $1 million, and then you'll show that in year 30, year 27, 28, 29, you're at $100,000 gap. And you've got to put $300,000 in an escrow account at the end. Your net benefit isn't worth it, So
I totally agree.
And suggestion on that.
And Travis, I think we do have to look at, for disaster recovery projects, like the underwriting probably has to look quite a bit different, right? It's not like this was a fairly functioning market that needs more affordable units. It's a market that's had a major trauma to the marketplace. And I do think we have to look at different underwriting. I agree with you. So if we get the money, give me a call, Travis, and let's talk about that. Okay. Thank you. That ends my update. I will follow up with information about the sponsors, the language of the bill, and hopefully a link to it. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Next, we have our AHART Comprehensive Housing Recovery Strategy. They'll be updated by Adrienne Bush.
I don't know if Adrian's on the line yet. She had a 10 a.m. meeting, so might need to move hers to a later time on the agenda.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Yeah, be on the lookout for her when she comes back in. So let's move on to the Housing Fund's financial report and program allocations. Kay McAfee. Does anybody see her on?
Hey, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. There she is.
Everyone saw my mouth moving, but they didn't. So the financial report, good morning, everyone. The financial report this morning is brief. We do have a snapshot of information. The first slide will show AHTF receipts. We are showing the last quarter of FY22 into the first quarter of FY23. As you'll see, receipts have been slightly lower than previous quarters, but still above projections. In the next slide here, you'll also see a snapshot again of the last quarter of 2022. Our CFO has permitted that AHTF grant dollars be forward committed up to approximately 1 year funds for the state. So looking at the funds available and uncommitted, we are really in good standing due to KHC's budget practice of forwarding committed dollars. We can see that those funds are getting quickly out the door. As Wendy has mentioned, there has been some implementation of making AHTF dollars more flexible, increasing the amounts to get out to our partners that are in urgent needed areas across Eastern and Western Kentucky. Up next, as we look at some future projects, you will hear and see more information on what is happening with partners as well as projects. If there are any questions, I can take those now. We can look at the next portion of the segment.
I'm sorry. I have a question. So is that a normal amount that is, I see it was 1951 at the end. I'm sorry, 1811 at the end of 21. Do we normally have some type of money uncommitted at the end of the year, or is it usually always committed? I'm just curious how that normally plays out.
We usually have some, Travis, because and our goal is to have roughly 1 quarter's worth of receipts, available to be committed. And what our last quarter, what we brought in was about 1,300,000. So like this year, we're ending with about a quarter's worth of money. But you can see that in previous years, we had almost 2 quarters worth sitting in. So we're doing a lot of forward committing, basically committing before we even have the money quite yet, so that projects can get going. We can fund it with other sources, and then the AHTF funds come in and we can swap it out. That's been a goal of ours, is to not have a lot of uncommitted funds sitting around. As you can see, at the end of September, we actually had a negative amount of funds in the account. And I mean, we had a negative balance when you take what we had committed.
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's what I want to know. Thanks.
Yeah.
So I will proceed with the next segment here.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm going to be presenting 2 of the featured projects from multifamily programs. And back in July, I think I explained that we have, not necessarily every year, but we have 2 different funding rounds, a tax credit funding round where tax credits are involved in the project. And then we have a non-credit round where tax credits are not involved in the project and just soft funds are. So this first project is Jackson Landing. It's a new construction. It's done by Walbuck Development. It is in Franklin, Kentucky, which is Simpson County. It's a 40-unit, 11 building project with 10 of those units containing 4 bedrooms and each of them having a community center. KHC invested $225,000 in Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And then there was about $780,000 in tax credits. And here are some pictures from the inside of the units. Sorry, my screen is a little foggy for some reason. Thank you. And then the second featured project is PH Duplex number 6. Back in June, we looked at PH Duplex number 5. This is part of a multi-phase project that Partnership Housing does. They do really great work. She's done several of these. This is located in Owsley County and Boonville, Kentucky. This one has consists of 3 duplexes containing a total of 4 2-bedroom units and 2 3-bedroom units. And this is a non-credit project, so no tax credits were used in this project. We have 300,000 in Affordable Housing Trust Fund and just over $1 million in home in this project. And here are some pictures of the inside of the units. She does really good work. And that is it. Thank you.
Hey, Wendy, this is Jimmy Higdon. Can I jump back in for a second? I looked up that House Bill 89. That is an appropriations bill filed by Derek Graham. It's got about like 21 different line items, I think, for request. So that bill will not, according to the what House and Senate leadership have said, they won't reopen the budget. But I will watch for a spot. If we can somehow get the 15 million to you, I would be glad to work on that. Can't make any promises, but I know that is important. But anyway, I guess everything in that is important. But that's an update of where that bill is.
Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate you rooting around and finding that out.
Not a problem.
Stephen, Adrian has joined the meeting.
Okay. All right. We will circle back to the Comprehensive Housing Recovery Strategy presented by Adrian Bush.
Hi there. This is Adrian Bush from the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky. Bear with me because I am driving. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So in response to the disasters that we've had in the Commonwealth in 2021, beginning with flooding in much of the state in the earlier part of 21, followed by tornadoes and other straight line storms in Western Kentucky in December of 21, followed by flooding again in Eastern Kentucky. We've been working with providers, nonprofit developers, and some for-profit folks across the state since that time to figure out, okay, what do we do now? So a little bit about the Homeless and Housing Coalition. We are an advocacy policy organization. We also provide direct service to people experiencing homelessness. And we also are a state partner of the National Low Income Housing Coalition, which has done a lot around disaster housing recovery. So the state is in the midst of getting approval from its Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Plan. They have submitted the plan to HUD. And but the bottom line here is that this is for 21 disasters, and there's a significant housing funding gap between what is available to allocate and what still remains to be done. The plan that was submitted to HUD in November, there was an estimated remaining unmet housing need of $110 million. The proposed housing allocation was $40 million, which left a gap of about $70 million to address outstanding housing needs. Now, since that time, you can go to the next slide too, sorry. Okay, sorry. One of the things that we have noticed and commented to the Department of Local Government is just some of the good things about the plan is allowing housing developers to apply directly to DLG in some eligible activities. Another issue that we see is just the data around HUD-assisted property from the 21 disasters is limited. And then there's nothing in the current DLG's plan that really addresses people experiencing homelessness. So, plan is at HUD for approval. Next slide. Okay, but then now we have another wrench. So we're getting more money, So that's great. Thanks to Leader McConnell and the work of the congressional delegation. And on January 18th, HUD finally released the Federal Register notice, which is what kind of kicks off the process for getting CDBG-DR money. And so we're a little bit unclear as to how this impacts the state plan that is currently sitting at HUD, and then how much of that additional money will be allocated towards housing and to which counties. So next slide. All right, so moving on to the 22 disasters, just tracking the unmet need. FEMA is pretty much done in the area from what we understand. And the median awards for housing assistance were only around $4,500 per house. Other needs assistance was about $500. And then individuals and household programs, that median award was about $4,600. The average award was $10,000. But if you are needing to replace your entire house, then $10,000 isn't going to buy you much. Next slide. All right. Also from Eric Dixon with the Ohio River Valley Institute, he is tracking the amount of home damage. You can see it's incredibly substantial, both in the 13 county area in eastern Kentucky, plus the 4 hardest hit of Breathitt, Knott, Letcher, and Terry. Next slide. Okay. So what we are asking, talking to legislators about, trying to get feedback on, and we've been doing this through the Affordable Housing Caucus. The members on it, that caucus has met twice during the fall, as well as meeting with legislators right now, because we're before they reconvene, as Senator Higdon said, on February 7th. What we need essentially is a disaster housing trust fund, one that could address emergency home repair, new home build or replacement, multifamily rental, capital repairs, and then housing counseling for those who need debt service and credit counseling and all of that. What we are asking for is that this fund would be seeded with $150 million to start. Next slide. Okay, so we are fully aware that this is not a budget session, and we take Senator Higdon's comments seriously. Looking to 2024, which is a budget session, we would be looking at another $150 million, allowing housing providers to fully meet the housing needs that have been exposed since December of 21, basically finishing the job, right? Next slide. One of the things, I mean, we have watched the executive branch and the plans to buy state land and planned communities and such. But we really feel that the legislature did a good job in responding to some of the immediate needs uncovered by the tornadoes in December of 21, because they were able to come, they were scheduled to come back into session, right, in January of 22. And then with the special session in August of this year to respond to the disasters of eastern Kentucky. But one of the pieces that has been discussed is, how does the legislature respond to housing needs? And so we really feel like creating a flexible disaster housing trust fund, scaling up the existing affordable housing trust fund, will allow the legislature to respond to the needs in ways that the executive branch cannot. Next slide. Okay, so on the right-hand side, you see the folks who are advocating for a HART as a policy proposal. And I would encourage anyone who is an advocate on this call and isn't on this already to sign on. This slide deck will go out after the meeting, and these links are live. So you can sign on directly from this PowerPoint. We also have a social media toolkit. We can help you schedule meetings with legislators. And we also are having a Have a Heart for Housing Day in Frankfurt on February 21st. And then the last slide is just my information. So feel free to get up with me.
Thank you, Adrian,
Hey,
for your report.
Oh.
Good job. Was there a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize. This is Nima again. I wanted to ask Adrian, is there any opposition to this concept? Or are you hearing any objections or concerns about it?
Well, I think we have to live in the reality that technically this isn't a budget session, and a bill that would be filed with this framework would be an appropriation. So if there are things we can do, we're just trying to, like I said, get feedback and figure out what will work during a non-budget session. The other piece of pushback, if you will, has been around the capacity of housing developers to spend this amount of money. Our housing developer capacity varies widely across the state, even within regions. So you have some really high capacity housing developers. It's also easier to spend a lot of trust fund money in, say, like one big rental project instead of, new home, a handful of new homes. So I think a lot depends on individual legislators' frame of reference with the housing developers in their area. If they don't have a community development corporation in their area, they may be like, well, I can't see how this would be set. And then you have other legislators who do have really strong nonprofits or developers in their district who are like, oh yeah, my so-and-so could totally use this money very, very quickly. So those are the two big pieces that we're hearing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a good idea to use this non-budget session as a way to educate and build awareness of this issue, so that everyone's familiar when we are doing appropriations. I am also, concerned about the capacity and the guardrails or parameters of spending the money. So I'd be interested in learning a bit more about that as well. Thanks.
Sure. And the other piece too is just looking at the existing SAFE funds that were appropriated by the legislature and perhaps broadening the use of those funds to be used for housing development, and kind of structuring it the same way. Like there are guardrails and some statutory language, especially around like the way the funds can be used for schools, that I think we could potentially revisit.
Is now exiting
House Bill 1 from the 22 special session, and maybe add some language to it that would get around some of these concerns and not get around them, but like address them head on.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Adrian, this is
now
Travis.
joining.
Adrian, this is Travis. I know I mentioned this before, but it's worth bringing it up because I think this is a really cool idea and something that I get that it's hard to go ask for $150 million. We did a project in Clarksville, Indiana, and Indiana allows pilots, payment in lieu of taxes, and Kentucky doesn't have them. Uh-huh. And one of the things that happened when we did the project is we applied for a 15-year pilot in Clarksville, and we got it. But in Indiana's law, if you get a pilot to develop housing, your tax proceeds, the county has to set aside an account that your tax proceeds go into for home repairs and things of that nature, exactly what you're talking about. So it's not new dollars, it's not appropriation of dollars or anything else. It would be the taxes that they're not getting now because I'm building a new product. So it's taxes that they're not getting now that they then take in and set aside as an allocation to exactly what you're talking about. So, I mean, I'm all about copycatting what somebody else does. I thought that was a really cool concept that I had no idea that they did. And it's just something to think about as you're trying to advocate for this.
Same. I am all about not reinventing the wheel. And if somebody is doing this well, we want to borrow what they've learned from it. So thanks for the heads up on that. If you have any links, Andy, feel free to send them to me, but I can also look up, I can also use the Google too. So I appreciate it, Travis.
No, I think we do have that. No, I'll send that over. Like I said, it may not be anything you can use out of it, but I thought it was a really cool concept when we dealt with it over there. So
awesome.
All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. Next order of business is featured projects, single family, Jessica Shelton and Kelly Reynolds.
This is Kelly Reynolds, and I will be covering this. So I had two topics on the agenda. I kind of blended them together for this part of the presentation and meeting, but we wanted to talk about and focus when we're talking about projects on what we did with our AHTF home repair program to make it available for emergencies. We did a piece of this during the tornadoes. We did a piece of this in March 2021 when we had flooding in Eastern Kentucky, and then we did a new version for the flooding in July 2022 for Eastern Kentucky counties. So I wanted to kind of review what we did and then show you just some pictures. So we issued in September 2022 for our funding in HR 19, HR 20, HR 21, HR 22. So 4 years of funding for our AHTF home repair projects to recipients who served FEMA counties. Now, most of those FEMA counties are served by our single family developers that we currently have relationships with in those projects. Not all of them are. This operates like AHTF home repair, so we already have a stand-up AHTF home repair program. What we have done is we've developed a shell for emergencies that we take and tweak for each emergency that we have. So this is good. This funding is good through January 31st, 2024 for any of these projects. So if they had money left in an HR 19 project that they wanted to use for emergency repairs, they could use that up until January 31st, 2024. It covers the counties of Breathitt, Clay, Floyd, Knott, Leslie, Letcher, Magoffin, Martin, Owsley, Perry, Pike, and Whitley,
now exiting,
as well as Cumberland, Lee, Lincoln, Johnson, Powell, and Wolf. I know firsthand, I can tell you Lincoln County did not have a project available or a developer available in one of these projects. All right, next slide. So the summary of our repairs, typically our AHTF home repair is capped at $20,000. So for emergency repairs, we raised that limit to $39,999. We do a $3,000 for admin cap, so they can get admin off of these projects. We currently use a minimum habitability standard. We keep that intact with emergency repairs because we still want them to meet those standards. They are very low. We are really just trying to keep people housed and keep people in their homes, so they're not super strict. They are things like structures the foundation can't have cracks in it. Roofs have to be sound. Flooring can't have tripping hazards. They're pretty basic standards. We encourage braiding our funds with other funds. So if there is FEMA money available to those homeowners, we want them to braid those funds. We encourage them to look at USDA, rural development, to braid their funds with some of their loan programs. So there are relationships with other funders to bring more money to that project for repairs if they need it. They can use their current HR funding, so we were able to do that, but we are also able to give them some additional AHTF funding for emergency repairs specifically. So what we did was we asked the developers, how much money do you think you need? Like, be reasonable. What can you do? So a lot of them came in around thinking they would do 16 homes for repairs. So we gave them money for whatever number they told us. We put it in their most current HR project so that they could use that money for emergency repairs. We expect to be more flexible if they need to move that. There are some of them that are proposing some home buyer activities to do rebuilds on houses. So we may move some of that money to a home buyer project that they have open. This was just kind of to do some emergency quick fixes. We expect more. So far, 9 projects have been funded. We have 3 that are finished. We expect more to come. There are more coming in every day. So those definitely are picking up. I think they just needed to get to a point where most of the muck out was finished, which took quite a bit of time. And now they're able to assess what repairs will fall under this program. We are also doing a little bit of a different approach. We did have properties, unfortunately, that were destroyed by the flooding that we had done AHTF, just a normal AHTF home repair program on, that were subject to deed restrictions, 5-year deed restrictions. So if the developers just send those to us, we are releasing those, doing an early deed restriction release on those destroyed properties, so that in most of those cases, the home buyers are selling the land. So, all right, next slide. I think this gets us into some pictures. So I tried to find some pictures from some of the properties. These are 2 different properties that have been submitted to us that really show kind of the damage from the floods. Again, these projects are not finished, so I don't have kind of a before and after picture. But in this first property, you can see the crawl space. There's a lot of mud under the crawl space where the water was. The beams are gone. The supporting beams are gone. And you can see where there's mold starting to grow in that crawl space from the water. The second picture is inside a house, and you can see the damage on the drywall where they're having to cut the drywall out where it was water damaged, and you can obviously see the floors have some water damage as well. So we'll be going in and helping or funding the repair of that. All right. In addition to kind of making our HTF home repair project already, the guidelines flexible for emergency repairs, we also gave CHOTO operating funds to our partners who are serving FEMA counties. So CHOTO operating is funded through our home dollars. They typically get CHOTO operating anyway, but we just gave them more money to help them. Some of our partners had offices that were destroyed. They have offices that were flooded. So they themselves were dealing with flooding issues in addition to trying to help in their communities. So we gave them additional operating expenses. They had employees who had flooded houses, who were having to flee their homes. So it affected our partners directly, and we wanted to do something to help them as well. So CHOTO operating was an easy way we could do that. So we directed more home money to our CHOTO operating and gave to 3 of our agencies in September. There were larger awards than what is a normal CHOTO operating award. So we did that in their first quarter. So we went ahead and gave that money out, even though we didn't have our home money. We funded it out of old home money from the previous fiscal year while we were waiting for a new home money. So meanwhile, other CHOTOs received their grant agreements in January. These 3 CHOTOs got their grant agreements in September, just to help keep them rolling while they are trying to do emergency repairs and doing some muck out, which is not their expertise, but they were helping with that. We did award our HAF, which is our Housing Assistance Fund. It's KHD's private fund, to one agency who wasn't a CHOTO. They lost an office, was totally destroyed in the flood in one of their counties. So we wanted to give them some operating expenses to help. I do know what they have done with those operating expenses is actually use that to help flood victims, to offset crews that they're using out of other programs where they can't charge to a grant, to offset those expenses. So, and that is it. Do I have any questions out there? So kind of what we've done to really respond to some of those emergency requests and be as flexible as we can. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Here. All right, next we move on to other business and announcements.
I just wanted to share with you all, you have probably seen in the Governor's Team Kentucky update, as well as news stories in Louisville and Lexington, that all three of us, Louisville, Lexington, and KHC, are narrowing or winding down in some way our pandemic rent assistance programs. Ours was called Healthy at Home Eviction Relief. We stopped accepting new applications as of Friday at 5 p.m. We are still processing applications, even some from Jefferson County. But I just want to let you all know that we are looking at what we do with the last of that money, and our focus is folks who are actually in the courts and folks experiencing homelessness. But in Louisville and Lexington are in similar places trying to decide what they do with the last of that pandemic rent assistance. I do want to note that across the three of us, we did successfully avert a tsunami of evictions during COVID-19. You know, we didn't have tidal waves of people being set out, and we didn't have landlords that just lost, you know, tons and tons of rent revenue because of the pandemic. So I feel like it was a real success. It is hard to wind it down and not have that option. Judges, the AG's office, the governor's constituent office have all liked being able to have a resource for folks who were about to be set out, but that is winding down. Thanks.
Thank you for that update. Wendy, anybody else? All right. Our next scheduled meeting date is going to be July the 25th. At this time, I am to assume that we're going to go virtual again. I think we get way more people in the room when we're virtual. So that's going to be the suggestion. But we'll get you information out on that to confirm that as we get closer. And then last order of business is motion to adjourn.
So moved. This is Adrian Bush.
Adrian, all right. And second?
Ann Holland, I'll second.
All right, Ann, thank you very much. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.